Welcome my friends, this is Dave from Fascinating Facts as we look at the data about the topic of vampires. Today we look at part 1 of a 3-part series on vampires, starting with the gruesome Vrykolakas. Vampires are often depicted as mythological beings who roam the world at night searching for people whose blood they feed upon. They may be the best-known classic monsters of all. Most people associate vampires with Count Dracula, the legendary blood-sucking subject of Bram Stoker's epic novel, which was published in 1897. But the history of vampires began long before Stoker was born. Creatures with vampiric characteristics have appeared at least as far back as ancient Greece, where stories were told of creatures that attacked people in their sleep and drained their bodily fluids. Tales of walking corpses that drank the blood of the living and spread plague flourished in medieval Europe in times of disease. However, the ancient topic about vampires is very different. Fascinating Facts is now about to take you back to ancient Greece. Vrykolakas and ancient Greece. Ancient Greeks believed that the dead are able to reanimate and exist in a state that is neither living nor dead, but rather a state in between, undead. Burials of suspected Vrykolakas have been discovered throughout the ancient Greek world. The earliest examples are from Cyprus and date to the Neolithic period, around 4500 to 3800 BC. At Kyrokitia, flexed bodies buried in pit graves were pinned by millstones that were placed on either their heads or chests in order to trap the body in its grave. Similar burials were found at Argolid. In the necropolis of the city of Camarina, 2 burials were found which were different from the rest. The first contains an adult of unknown sex. The head and feet of the individual are completely covered by large amphora fragments, which are large pottery containers. The heavy amphora fragments found were presumably intended to pin the individual to the grave and prevent it from rising out of the ground. The second burial contains a child approximately 8 to 13 years old. 5 large stones were placed on top of the child's body. These stones were used to trap the body in its grave. So what were the people of ancient Greece so afraid of? The answer is the Vrykolakas. What did the Vrykolakas look like? A Vrykolakas is a harmful undead creature in Greek folklore. It shares similarities with numerous other legendary creatures, but is generally equated with the vampire of the folklore of the neighboring Slavic countries. While the two are very similar, a Vrykolakas eats flesh, particularly livers rather than drinking blood, which combined with other factors such as its appearance. Some accounts describe them as zombies, others as bloated walking corpses, while others describe them looking like a pale person, much like the idea of Dracula, but all describe a creature that wants to kill and eat you. Where do Vrykolakas come from? The Greeks traditionally believed that a person could become a Vrykolakas after death due to a sacrilegious way of life, an excommunication, a burial in unconsecrated ground, or eating the meat of a sheep which had been wounded by a wolf, or a werewolf. Some believed that a werewolf itself could become a powerful Vrykolakas after being killed, and would retain the wolf-like fangs, hairy palms and glowing eyes it formerly possessed. The bodies of Vrykolakas have the same distinctive characteristics as the bodies of vampires in Balkan folklore. They do not decay, instead they swell and may even attain a drum-like form, being very large, have a ruddy complexion, and are, according to one account, fresh and gorged with new blood. People with red hair and gray eyes at this time in history were thought to be people who could more easily become a Vrykolakas, according to accounts near the region of modern Serbia. The activities of the Vrykolakas are nearly always harmful, ranging from leaving their grave and roaming about, through engaging in poltergeist-styled activity, and up to causing epidemics in the community. Among other things, the creature is believed to knock on the doors of houses and call out the name of the residents. If it gets no reply the first time, it will pass without causing any harm. If someone does answer the door, he or she will die a few days later and become another Vrykolakas. For this reason, there is a superstition present in certain Greek villages that one should not answer a door until the second knock. Legends also say that the Vrykolakas crushes or suffocates the sleeping by sitting on them, much like an incubus inducing sleep paralysis, as does a vampire in Bulgarian folklore. Unlike vampires in Greek folklore, the Vrykolakas are described more as cannibals than bloodsuckers with a taste in particular for human livers. Since the Vrykolakas becomes more and more powerful if left alone, Legends state that one should destroy its body. According to some accounts, this can only be done on Saturday, which is the only day when the Vrykolakas rests in its grave, the same as with Bulgarian vampire legend. This may be done in various ways, the most common being exorcising, impaling, beheading, cutting into pieces, and especially cremating the suspected corpse, so that it may be freed from living death, and its victims may be safe. Belief in the Vrykolakas was still common in Greece in World War II, especially in rural areas. During the Great Famine in 1941-42, where about 300,000 Greeks starved to death, the graveyards were so overfilled that many families were forced to bury their loved ones outside of the cemeteries. So many people starved to death during the Great Famine that officials of the collaborationist Hellenic state took to gathering up the corpses and dumping them in mass graves. Since those buried in unconsecrated ground were believed to come back to haunt the living as Vrykolakas, this possibility caused much distress for those families who were unable to bury their dead in the church cemeteries, and some families took preemptive steps to prevent their loved ones from becoming Vrykolakas, such as beheading their corpses. Vrykolakas in the modern world. The first Western accounts of belief in Vrykolakas are from the mid-17th century, in compositions by authors such as the Greek librarian of the Vatican Leo Alacius, in De Quorundum Graecorum Opinationibus, in the year 1645, and Father François Richard, in Relation de l'Île de Santorini, 1657, who tend to confirm the stories. The 1718 account of French traveler Joseph Piton de Tournefort, who witnessed the exhumation and slaying of a suspected Vrykolakas on the Greek island of Mykonos in 1701. The Spanish scholar Álvaro García Marín wrote in 2016 that if we were to judge from the standpoint of a Western European of 1730 or 1820, Dracula, without any doubt, should have been Greek. At the beginning of the 18th century, when the Slavic vampire was still unknown in the West, the Greek Vrykolakas had been recurring in theological treatises, travel accounts, and books on occultism from the beginning of the 16th century. So, belief in the Vrykolakas still endures, and their legends still remain in the minds of people around the world. Fascinating facts. Summary. The top facts about Vrykolakas. Vrykolakas are based on the Greek belief that you can exist between life and death. Vrykolakas are like zombies who eat of the dead, which is an idea that would terrify the ancient Greeks just as much as it scares people today. Vrykolakas is the proto-vampire, and many popular vampire books still have vampires who look like a zombie. Also, all zombie films and games draw on the Vrykolakas legends whether they realize it or not. People considered different or considered an outsider were thought to be a potential Vrykolakas. This meant that discrimination and prejudice at the time could target anyone who was different as a social scapegoat. The early Greek world was volatile, and they tried to understand the world through an ideological lens of magic and religion. Well, I hope you have enjoyed the fascinating history of the Vrykolakas. So for now, this is Dave signing off. If you liked the video, then hit the subscribe button and look out for part 2 of our vampire series. Take care, everyone.